You owe it to yourself to live beautifully, and I am. There is no such thing as human perfection, and yet when you hear Lataji sing, you wonder how she sang that song so beautifully, so perfectly, or how Kumar Gandharva touched your soul so powerfully. The rules of improvisation apply beautifully to life. Never say no, you have to be interested to be interesting, and your job is to support your partners. The United States is truly remarkable, a nation founded on a set of Enlightenment ideals so beautifully expressed by the Declaration of Independence and codified in the U.S. Constitution. We should feel good about our ideals, even when we don't quite manage to live up to them. Religion and political expediency go beautifully hand in hand. Everything in nature has its own intrinsic charm, as the work of its creator's hand, but the chief beauty of the whole lies in its suggested relations to humanity. Things announce and wait for persons. The house would not have been thus beautifully built and furnished, except for an expected tenant. Books are not made for furniture, but there is nothing else that so beautifully furnishes a house. Nothing is ever done beautifully which is done in rivalship, or nobly, which is done in pride. A snowflake is another beautifully ordered example of what simple, natural meteorological processes can produce. Stars form by gravity, collapsing into spherically ordered structures that can remain in this form only if they release tremendous heat energy into the environment. I think Bridge Over Troubled Water was a very good song. Artie sang it beautifully. The Boxer was a really nice record, but I don't think I've written any great songs. Tum Tak is a beautiful thought and is a rhythmic expression. It's been composed beautifully. It may sound easy but is difficult to attempt or sing it live. I loved Katie Wicks's book Delicacy. It's a poignant and beautifully penned book about grief and cake. Together at last. Technology is a beautifully shiny double-edged sword. Music is like wine, it ages beautifully, and if you spend enough time you can just sit there and listen to it entirely differently. Sometimes, musicians worry too much about how beautifully they are playing. I loved Everybody Loves Raymond, because I like Ray and I thought it was beautifully cast, I thought it was great writing. I thought Patricia Heaton was wonderful. Composers in the old days used to keep strictly to the bass of the theme, as their real subject. Beethoven varies the melody, harmony, and rhythms so beautifully. I thought I was going to be a lot more freaked out by being naked on stage. I think on film I would have been more freaked out, because film is less forgiving. But on stage it's lit so beautifully, it would make my mother look good. Glögg is a Scandinavian mulled wine, sweetened with honey, almonds, raisins and spices. Its name suits its purpose so beautifully. We learned to put discipline in the haircuts by using actual geometry, actual architectural shapes and bone structure. The cut had to be perfect and layered beautifully, so that when a woman shook it, it just fell back in. Every single woman is beautifully unique, and the sexiest thing she can do is own her curves, embrace her differences, and stand tall in exactly who she is. I love quotations because it is a joy to find thoughts one might have, beautifully expressed with much authority by someone recognized wiser than oneself. Deals are my art form. Other people paint beautifully on canvas or write wonderful poetry. I like making deals, preferably big deals. That's how I get my kicks. Mom still has a huge, beautifully decorated Christmas tree. The whole family comes together after midnight mass and has the traditional plum cake and wine. We spend the night at Mom's home, and in the morning we wake up and open the presents. In the afternoon, we sit down to have a traditional Christmas lunch. If you travel around America you see different sections of highways donated by this or that person, and that's a slow beginning of what may end up being a situation common in the third world. Some sections of highways in wealthy areas are beautifully maintained and other parts are just dirt-strewn potholes. Some people play steel string beautifully, but I'm not exactly a world-class picker. To feel most beautifully alive means to be reading something beautiful, ready always to apprehend in the flow of language the sudden flash of poetry. This will be our reply to violence, to make music more intensely, more beautifully, more devotedly than ever before. Everybody does their homework, and we all come together and just knock it out. There are adjustments to make, and if you have actors who are collaborators and who really know how to listen and be in the scene together, then it works out beautifully. I don't want something special, I want something beautifully plain. Poetry can unleash a terrible fear. I suppose it is the fear of possibilities, too many possibilities, each with its own endless set of variations. With basketball, you can correct your own mistakes, immediately and beautifully, in midair. Every garden scheme should have a backbone, a central idea beautifully phrased. Every wall, path, stone and flower should have its relationship to the central idea. Words impress me. If a man can speak eloquently and beautifully to me, I just melt on the floor. I don't write beautifully, I just write reports about our condition. How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, was a film I'd seen prior to being approached for the sequel. I don't often watch family animated movies, but it's one that I loved and thought was really well done, beautifully crafted storytelling. There are other singers of ranchera music who sing very beautifully, but you can tell from the way they sing that they never lived on a ranch. They never knew what it was to milk a cow, to birth a calf, to shoe a horse. I've lived all that. As you get older, you want less from the world, you just want to experience it. Any barriers to feeling emotions get dismantled, and ordinary things become beautifully poetic. There is little in the architecture of a city that is more beautifully designed than a tree. When language is treated beautifully and interestingly, it can feel good for the body, it's nourishing, it's rejuvenating. When all else fails, dress beautifully and throw your food. It's so beautifully arranged on the plate, you know someone's fingers have been all over it. The several tribes of Indians inhabiting the regions of the upper Missouri, and of whom I spoke in my last letter, are undoubtedly the finest looking, best equipped, and most beautifully costumed of any on the continent. There is always the danger that we may just do the work for the sake of the work. This is where the respect and the love and the devotion come in, that we do it to God, to Christ, and that's why we try to do it as beautifully as possible. A lie will easily get you out of a scrape, and yet, strangely and beautifully, rapture possesses you when you have taken the scrape and left out the lie. My father was a scientist and his colleagues were into pathology and microbiology, and study of viruses and how it spreads and mutates. So I understand the beauty with which nature works and more beautifully how our immune systems work. The difference between a beautifully made failure and a beautifully made hit is who you've got playing the leads. I can tell when I meet you, within 3 minutes, how you were raised. When I met Lady Gaga on the American Horror set, beautifully brought up. I think that when you write for stars, I think that you have to be very specific about what they do beautifully and let them bring it to life. We will come back with even better music and concepts to be able to say goodbye to the most beautiful moment in life beautifully. A Charlie Brown Christmas is a national treasure because it delivers beautifully the central miracle of Christmas, Emmanuel, God with us, from the wood of the manger to the wood of the cross. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.